The glass paperweight, a gift from Commissioner Reynolds for saving the company during last year's compliance crisis, shattered against the wall as Monique from HR set the banker's box on my desk. I stared at the broken pieces, my palms still warm from where I'd gripped it seconds earlier. She has an MBA. You'll understand, Monique said, not meeting my eyes as she gestured to the woman hovering in my doorway. The stranger wore a blazer that still had the store creases visible, her eyes already measuring the dimensions of my corner office. I'm Brielle, she announced, extending a hand I didn't take. Top of my class at Wharton. The board is excited about bringing fresh perspectives to regulatory compliance. 15 years. 15 years I'd protected this company from every agency that could shut us down. I knew the coffee preferences of every federal inspector. I'd attended the funerals of 2 regulators' parents. I'd built a compliance system that ran like clockwork while executives slept soundly. The nameplate comes off easily, Brielle added, already touching my door. I have calligraphy skills. I can make a new one by tomorrow. Without a word, I opened my drawer and removed my leather-bound inspection journal, the one containing 15 years of personal notes on every regulator who'd ever walked through our doors. I placed it in the box alongside the family photos Monique was awkwardly gathering. The audit team will be here at 4, I said quietly. We'll handle it, Monique replied, now rearranging pens on what was no longer my desk. Will you? I asked. Commissioner Thomas is leading today's inspection. His son just deployed overseas. His arthritis acts up when it rains. He takes his coffee black with exactly 1 sugar cube, not packet, cube. He hates being called sir and expects whoever manages compliance to know the updated protocols his department released last month. Brielle laughed. I memorized the regulatory handbook during orientation week. I think I can manage a simple inspection. I nodded once, placed my keycard atop the box, and walked out. The entire floor went silent as I passed. Darcy from accounting covered her mouth. Leo from legal stared at his shoes. Not one of them spoke up. By 3, I sat in my car, rain pattering on the roof as I watched government vehicles pull into reserved spaces. My phone buzzed with panicked texts from former colleagues. At 3:47, the CEO's assistant bolted through the front doors, scanning the parking lot in desperation. When she spotted my car, she ran across the wet pavement, heels splashing through puddles. I rolled down my window just enough to hear her gasping pleas. Everly, Thomas is threatening an automatic failure. He refuses to speak to anyone but you. Brielle tried showing him her diploma and he walked out. Please, the CEO authorized me to offer anything. Anything! I checked my watch. How's that MBA working out for everyone? Okay, I need to pause for a second. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who underestimated your value, you know exactly how this feels. That moment when they suddenly realize they made a catastrophic mistake, pure vindication. If this story is hitting close to home for you, hit that like button right now and let me know in the comments if you've ever been in Everly's position. And if you're new here, subscribe for more workplace revenge stories that'll have you cheering from your seat. Now, let's get back to what happened next. My name is Everly Tate. I don't have an MBA. What I do have is institutional knowledge that can't be taught in any classroom. I joined this manufacturing company straight out of community college, working my way up from administrative assistant to becoming the regulatory compliance manager. No fancy title, just 15 years of protecting the company from itself. Manufacturing has regulations thicker than encyclopedia sets. One violation can trigger millions in fines or shut down production entirely. I learned every rule, befriended every inspector, and created systems that kept us compliant while our competitors racked up violations. The day before my humiliation began with unusual silence. People avoided eye contact in the hallways. My assistant Zoe's desk was mysteriously empty. When I asked about her, someone mumbled she'd been reassigned. Red flag number one. Then came the budget meeting. CEO Kent kept referring to upcoming changes in compliance leadership while avoiding my questions. Red flag number two. That evening, Director of Operations Xavier sent me a cryptic text. Sorry about tomorrow. Not my call. Red flag number three. I should have prepared myself, but nothing readies you for public humiliation. Now I sat in my car, rain drumming on the roof, as Penny, the CEO's assistant, begged me to save them. The inspection team gave us exactly 20 minutes to get you back in that building, or they're issuing a critical violation, she pleaded. Do you have any idea what that would do to our stock price? I'm aware, I replied coolly. I've prevented 17 potential critical violations in my tenure. Each one would have cost approximately 30 million in fines and remediation. Name your price, Penny said. Chief Compliance Officer title, corner office restored, double salary, it's yours. I stared at the rain-streaked windshield. Tell me something, Penny. Was it Kent's idea to replace me, or did the board push for someone with credentials over experience? Board Chair Linnea led the charge. She kept saying we needed professionalism in compliance. Someone with academic pedigree who understood modern regulatory frameworks. Penny's air quotes told me everything. Linnea, who joined 3 months ago, who hasn't attended a single inspection. That's her. I checked my watch. 12 minutes until Thomas issues that violation. Please, Everly, what do you want? What did I want? The question hung between us as rain pelted harder against the car. 15 years of loyalty dismissed because someone decided 3 letters after my name mattered more than 15 years of relationships and results. I want Chief Compliance Officer title with direct reporting to the CEO. 50% salary increase. My corner office back. And I want Brielle to work as my assistant for 6 months minimum to learn how regulatory relationships actually function in the real world. Done, Penny said without hesitation. And one more thing, I added as she turned to leave. I want Linnea to personally apologize in front of the executive team. Penny hesitated for the first time. That's... Then enjoy explaining to shareholders why we failed a critical inspection. 5 minutes later, I walked through the lobby, my heels clicking against marble. Executives lined the hallway, faces pale. Commissioner Thomas sat in the conference room, arms crossed, 2 junior inspectors beside him looking uncomfortable. The moment he saw me, his stern expression softened slightly. Cutting it close, Everly. Traffic, I replied with a hint of a smile. How's Jason adjusting to deployment? Calls when he can. Says the food is worse than my cooking, which is saying something. His eyes shifted to where Brielle stood, clutching a binder with trembling hands. Your colleague here tried telling me the storage temperatures for chemical compounds had been adjusted in the new regulations. I nodded. They have been, Thomas. For Category 4 compounds only, and only after passing the additional stability testing your department approved last quarter. He raised an eyebrow, impressed. You've read the updates. I helped draft the public comments on them, I replied. For the next 3 hours, I guided Thomas and his team through every department. I introduced him to new staff, remembered details about his family, and ensured every regulation was not just met, but exceeded. Behind me, Brielle followed silently, watching as I navigated complex regulations, not through memorization, but through relationship. When Thomas finally signed off on the inspection, declaring us fully compliant, CEO Kent pulled me into his office. You were. Irreplaceable? I suggested. We made a mistake, he admitted. Yes, you did. I leaned forward. Now, let's discuss how you're going to fix it, permanently. What Kent didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I hadn't come back just to save today's inspection. I had returned with a plan 15 years in the making. A plan that would ensure no one ever underestimated me again. But first, I needed to get my office back. and watched Brielle's face as she cleared out her 3-hour attempt at redecorating. The office removal crew worked quickly. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, as Brielle's designer notebooks and framed MBA diploma came down from my walls. She hovered nearby, lips pressed into a thin line, eyes darting between me and Kent, who supervised the transition with visible discomfort. The personnel paperwork for her new position needs to be processed by end of day, I reminded Kent, not bothering to lower my voice. Assistant to the Chief Compliance Officer. That's me, by the way. Kent nodded, avoiding Brielle's glare. HR is handling it now. When they finished, I walked into my restored office, ran my fingertips across the desk's familiar surface, and took my seat. Through the glass wall, I could see Brielle being shown to the assistant's desk outside my door, the same desk where I'd started 15 years ago. Poetic justice has a particular flavor. Sweet, but with an aftertaste that reminds you vengeance is never simple. I pulled out my laptop and began typing the email that would set everything in motion. The next morning, I arrived early. Brielle was already at her desk, typing furiously, hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Good morning, I said pleasantly. I need you to compile inspection records from the last 6 quarters. Organize them by inspector, violation category, and resolution time. She looked up, the strain of forced politeness evident in her tight smile. I've already started reviewing the company's compliance history. I noticed several inefficiencies in your record-keeping system. I leaned against her desk. Did you? Fascinating. By the way, Commissioner Thomas called. He wants to discuss the upcoming pipeline inspection next month. He specifically mentioned remembering you from yesterday's meeting. Said something about appreciating your enthusiasm. The color drained from her face. What should I tell him? Nothing. I've already scheduled lunch with him. You'll join us to take notes. Oh, and he likes to test new team members on regulatory knowledge. So review section 47.3 of the new guidelines before then. I turned to enter my office, then paused. That section doesn't exist, by the way. Just seeing if you'd blindly follow instructions. Her face flushed with anger. I'm not an idiot, Everly. I graduated top of my class, and I've navigated 15 years of shifting regulations without a single major violation. Education and experience are different teachers. I softened my tone slightly. Look, I don't blame you for taking the position they offered. I blame them for not valuing what they had. Now we both have something to prove. For a moment, I saw confusion replace the hostility in her eyes. She'd expected a nemesis, not a mentor with an edge. That afternoon, Board Chair Linnea stormed into my office without knocking, her tailored suit as rigid as her posture. Behind her trailed Monique from HR, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. This is unacceptable, Linnea snapped, waving a paper. You're demanding a formal apology in front of the executive team? Who do you think you are? I smiled pleasantly. I'm the person who prevented a critical violation yesterday that would have tanked our stock by at least 30%. Who are you again? Besides the person who nearly caused it? Her eyes narrowed. I've been brought in to modernize this company's leadership structure. Your reinstatement is temporary, I assure you. Is it? Let's test that theory. I opened my drawer and removed a folder. These are personal notes from every inspection I've managed for 15 years. Observations about inspectors' preferences, concerns, family details, things no handbook teaches, things no MBA program covers. That's company property, she stated, reaching for it. I pulled it back. Actually, it's not. I created this system on my own time. I built these relationships personally. And I've received 3 job offers since yesterday from competitors who understand the value of what I bring. She scoffed. Bluffing doesn't suit you. Check your email. I forwarded you the offers. I leaned back in my chair. Now, about that apology. Would you prefer tomorrow's executive meeting or should we call an emergency session today? 2 days later, I stood before the executive team, Brielle seated in the corner, taking notes as instructed. Linnea approached the podium with the stiffness of someone preparing for a root canal. I want to formally apologize to our Chief Compliance Officer, Everly Tate, she began, each word clearly painful. My decision to replace her was made without fully understanding the value of institutional knowledge and relationship management in regulatory compliance. It was a significant error in judgment that nearly cost this company millions. I nodded graciously, the picture of professional magnanimity. But inside, I knew this was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, I methodically reclaimed my position. I took Brielle to every regulatory meeting, every inspector lunch, every compliance review. I showed her how to read the room when an inspector was concerned but not stating it directly. I taught her how to build trust with people who could shut down our operations with the stroke of a pen. Against my expectations, she was observant and quick. By the third week, she had stopped mentioning her MBA and started asking thoughtful questions about relationship-based compliance management. Why did you thank Inspector Marlene for her thoroughness when she found that minor labeling issue? Brielle asked after one meeting. Shouldn't we want fewer findings? Marlene prides herself on attention to detail, I explained. By appreciating her thoroughness, I acknowledged her professional identity. She found something minor because she needs to document her value, but she overlooked 3 potential major findings because she trusts us to fix them before her next visit. Brielle's eyes widened with understanding. That's brilliant. They didn't teach us that at Wharton. No business school can teach you 15 years of relationship building, I said. But you can learn it in 6 months if you pay attention. As Brielle shadowed me, I noticed Kent and the executive team watching our interactions with growing unease. They'd expected warfare. Instead, they got a masterclass, and that worried them far more. One evening, working late, I discovered Brielle in the records room, poring over inspection reports from before my time. What are you researching? I asked, startling her. She hesitated before answering. I'm looking for patterns and violations from before you standardize the compliance system. I'm trying to understand what you built from scratch. I studied her face, searching for deception but finding only curiosity. Why? Because I want to understand how someone without an MBA created a system this effective. Because I'm starting to think my education missed something fundamental about how business actually functions. For the first time, I felt a twinge of something unexpected, respect for her willingness to learn. But I couldn't afford to soften. Not yet, not before my plan fully unfolded. Come to my office tomorrow morning. There's a board meeting I want you to observe. The next day, I walked into the boardroom with Brielle trailing behind me. Board members shifted uncomfortably as we took seats along the wall. Agenda item 3. CEO Kent announced, avoiding my gaze. Quarterly compliance report. I stood and distributed folders to each board member. You'll find our compliance metrics on page 1. 0 major findings for the 16th consecutive quarter. Page 2 shows competitor violation rates for comparison. Linnea flipped through the report with a frown. These numbers for our competitors, they're significantly worse than ours. Some have multiple critical violations. Yes, I agreed. Our closest competitor had 3 critical violations last quarter alone. Each cost them approximately $12 million in fines, plus production downtime. How do you have access to their internal violation data? Linnea demanded. I smiled. Relationships. Inspectors talk. Regulatory agencies share information. When you build trust with them over 15 years, you learn things no public record shows. The room fell silent as the implication settled. I didn't just protect the company. I possessed intelligence on every competitor in our industry. Intelligence no MBA program could access. As I continued my presentation, I noticed Xavier, Director of Operations, exchanging glances with Kent. Something was happening behind the scenes that I couldn't quite identify. A new plan forming, perhaps, a counter to my newfound power. That evening, as I was leaving, Xavier approached me in the parking garage. "They're not done trying to push you out," he said quietly, looking around to ensure we were alone. "Linnea has been meeting with outside consultants. Something about modernizing compliance systems through technology. Replacing me with software?" I laughed. "Good luck programming a computer to remember an inspector's daughter's wedding date." Xavier didn't smile. "Be careful, Everly. Linnea has the backing of major investors. This isn't over." As I drove home, his warning echoed in my mind. Of course it wasn't over. I'd only completed phase 1 of my plan. The true reckoning was yet to come. What none of them realized yet was that during my 15 years of building relationships with regulatory agencies, I'd learned more than just how to pass inspections. I'd learned secrets. The kind of secrets that could reshape the entire industry. The kind that made my corner office and title upgrades seem like consolation prizes compared to what I was really after. And tomorrow would be the day they finally understood who they had underestimated. The morning sun cast long shadows across the executive parking spaces as I pulled in beside Kent's luxury sedan. I checked my appearance in the rearview mirror, composed, confident, the picture of professional poise. Nothing about my expression betrayed what was about to unfold. My phone buzzed with a text from Brielle. "Already set up in conference room A as requested. Coffee waiting on your desk." In 3 weeks, she'd transformed from resentful rival to efficient assistant. I still couldn't fully trust her motivations, but her adaptability impressed me. Survival instincts, perhaps, or genuine realization that her education had gaps experience could fill. When I reached my office, I found not just coffee, but a detailed brief on each board member scheduled for today's emergency session. Brielle had compiled personal notes, voting histories, and even potential conflicts of interest. Information I hadn't asked for, but immediately recognized the value of. "This is thorough," I acknowledged when she appeared in my doorway. "I noticed you keep similar profiles on the inspectors. Thought it might help with the board." I studied her for a moment. "Why are you helping me? 3 weeks ago, you were taking my office." She leaned against the doorframe. "3 weeks ago, I thought an MBA made me qualified for your position. Now I realize I know maybe 5% of what it takes to do this job." She hesitated. "And frankly, watching Linnea throw you under the bus while Kent stood by silently was educational about the kind of leadership I want to model." Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a calendar alert. 1 hour until the emergency board meeting, a meeting I had requested through channels that guaranteed Linnea couldn't block it. "Ready the presentation materials," I instructed. "And Brielle, no matter what happens in that room, stay silent and keep taking notes." The boardroom filled gradually, tension thickening with each arrival. Linnea entered last, flanked by 2 people I didn't recognize. A man and woman in expensive suits carrying sleek tablets. "Everly," Linnea acknowledged stiffly. "I've invited compliance technology specialists to observe this meeting. They're helping us evaluate digital solutions for regulatory management." So Xavier's warning had been accurate. They were still planning to replace me, this time with software rather than an MBA graduate. "How thoughtful," I replied calmly. "Additional expertise is always welcome, especially for what I'm about to present." Kent called the meeting to order, eyes darting nervously between Linnea and me. "Everly has requested this emergency session to discuss." Actually, the agenda wasn't specified. "Thank you, Kent." I stood, distributing sealed folders to each board member. "Please don't open these yet. What I'm about to share requires context first." I activated the presentation screen, displaying a simple chart showing our company's compliance record compared to our 5 main competitors. As you can see, our violation rates are significantly lower than industry average. This has saved us approximately $87 million in fines over the past decade. I clicked to the next slide, but that's not the complete picture. The screen changed to show inspection schedules, ours versus competitors. Notice anything unusual? We undergo 40% fewer surprise inspections than our competitors. When inspectors do visit, they spend 30% less time in our facilities. Linnea frowned. Are you saying inspectors are showing favoritism? That's a serious allegation. Not favoritism, efficiency. They trust our documentation, our systems, and most importantly, they trust me. Which brings me to the real reason for this meeting. I gestured to the folders. You may open these now. As pages rustled, the room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Board members looked up in confusion, then shock, then something approaching fear. What am I looking at? Kent demanded, voice strained. Evidence that our three largest competitors have been systematically violating safety protocols while bribing mid-level regulatory officials to overlook critical issues. I clicked to display supporting documents on screen. Specifically, ClearPath Industries, Weber Manufacturing, and Apex Solutions have each compromised safety standards that directly affect public health. The technology consultants Linnea had brought exchanged alarmed glances. How did you obtain this information? Linnea asked, her voice sharp. Relationships. The same ones you tried to replace with an MBA and now want to replace with software. I moved to the next slide. Senior regulatory officials have been investigating these violations for months. They've kept me informed because of the trust we've built. These companies will be facing charges within 30 days. The room erupted in overlapping questions. I raised a hand for silence. Our company has been offered two options. Option 1, become a witness in the federal investigation, sharing everything we know about industry practices. This would provide us immunity and potentially exclusive access to government contracts when our competitors face debarment. Kent leaned forward. And option 2, be investigated alongside them. Inspectors assume similar practices across competing companies. Without someone they trust vouching for our compliance, we'd be presumed guilty by association. Linnea's face had gone ashen. These are publicly traded companies. If what you're saying is true, their stock will collapse when this becomes public. Yes, it will. In approximately 27 days, according to the investigation timeline. I paused, letting the implications sink in. Which brings me to my proposal. I distributed a second set of folders. This is a restructuring plan for our compliance department. It expands my team, increases my direct authority over production protocols, and establishes an ethics committee that reports directly to me rather than to the board. Kent flipped through the document, eyes widening. This would give you unprecedented authority within the company structure. It would give our compliance function the authority it needs to protect this company when our industry faces its biggest regulatory crisis in decades. Linnea slammed her folder shut. This is blackmail. You're leveraging confidential regulatory information to expand your power. I'm leveraging relationships I've built over 15 years to save this company from becoming collateral damage in an industry-wide investigation. I turned to face her directly. The same relationships you deemed less valuable than an MBA or compliance software. The room fell silent as board members exchanged nervous glances. I had them cornered, and everyone knew it. The consultant who'd come to replace me with technology stared at his tablet, suddenly finding the screen fascinating. We need time to consider this proposal, Kent finally said. The Regulatory Commission meets Thursday to finalize the investigation parameters. They've asked for my testimony given my industry expertise. I gathered my materials. I'll need your decision by Wednesday. Until then, I'll be working with Brielle to prepare our potential testimony. As Brielle and I walked out, leaving stunned silence behind us, she whispered, "That was the most brilliant power move I've ever witnessed." Back in my office, I closed the door and finally allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Phase 2 complete, but the real endgame was still coming. Wednesday arrived with Kent's capitulation. My restructuring plan was approved unanimously by a suddenly cooperative board. Linnea alone abstained. Her future influence clearly diminished. 2 weeks later, the regulatory investigation became public. As predicted, our competitor's stock plummeted as violations were exposed. Our company, positioned as a cooperative witness with model compliance systems, saw its market value increase by 30% in a single day. I sat in my expanded corner office, now with an adjacent conference room, reviewing applications for my growing compliance team. Brielle entered with the afternoon reports. The Weber Manufacturing CEO just resigned, she announced. Their board is being restructured under regulatory supervision. Predictable, I noted, signing off on the reports. How are we positioned for their government contracts? Already submitted preliminary bids as you suggested. We're favorably positioned given our compliance record and cooperation with investigators. I nodded, satisfied. And the executive retreat preparations? Confirmed. You'll be leading the 3-day training session on ethical leadership. Kent suggested it should be mandatory for all board members. She paused, including Linnea. Perfect. I leaned back in my chair, finally allowing myself a genuine smile. You know, Brielle, your 6-month assistant term ends next week. She tensed slightly. I've been meaning to discuss that. I've created a new position, Deputy Compliance Officer. The role reports directly to me, but carries significant independent authority. The job description requires both formal education and demonstrated relationship management skills. Understanding dawned on her face. You're offering me a promotion. I'm offering you the opportunity to earn one. The position starts with a 6-month probationary period. You'll need to prove you've learned the lessons I've been teaching. Why would you do this after how I came in? I considered the question carefully, because revenge isn't just about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about transforming the system that enabled them. I handed her the job description. Besides, you've shown you can learn from mistakes, unlike some of our leadership. Later that evening, I received a call from Commissioner Thomas. Impressive work, Everly, he said without preamble. The industry cleanup is proceeding exactly as you predicted. Thank you for trusting my assessment. The Commission is forming an industry advisory board to help reshape regulatory frameworks. We need someone who understands both sides, someone with relationships and integrity. I smiled as I looked out my office window at the company campus below. It's a company that had once handed me boxes to pack my things, now effectively under my protection and guidance. I'd be honored to serve, I replied. When I hung up, I opened my desk drawer and removed the nameplate that had been returned to my door 3 weeks earlier. Beside it, I placed a new one, larger, more substantial. It read, Everly Tate, Executive Vice President of Compliance and Ethics. Not bad for someone without an MBA. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or pushed aside despite your value, I hope Everly's story resonated with you. The sweetest revenge isn't just reclaiming what was taken, it's reshaping the entire game so no one can take it from you again. If this story satisfied your sense of justice, hit that like button and subscribe for more corporate comeuppance tales. And tell me in the comments, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned that no degree could ever teach you? Remember, your experience is your superpower. Wear it proudly, even when others can't see its worth.